Hi, and welcome to the second Manatee tutorial. Today we're gonna talk about the sources. So, the Manatee has a dual oscillator voice architecture. That means that the sound is produced by two sources. We have first the generator, located here, and then, right below, the sub-oscillator. There are two extra sources, the noise and the ring modulator, but we will cover them a bit later in this video. The main two sources can be mixed together using the balance knob. When you put the balance knob completely on the left, you get to hear only the sub-oscillator. When you put the balance knob on the right, you get to hear only the generator. What you can see on the screen is in the middle the balance value. Here we are 64 because we are full right. And you have two extra control here, which are called sub and gen, which are for the absolute volume of the oscillators. So what is it used for? Well, when you want to mix together the two and you want to control the balance so that the sound stays similar, it's cool to adjust the volume of the respective oscillator. There's another use for this is before you get into the filter, you want to adjust the signal level so that you can carefully craft the character of the filter by controlling how much is saturate and what's the ratio between the signal level and the resonance level. Alright, so for the sake of simplicity, we will start with the sub-oscillator. So, to listen to the sub-oscillator, let's select an init preset. So I click on part 1, then I browse the last preset of the factory preset, which is default, and we will set our balance knob to fully left, so we can hear only the sub. And here we're gonna select the waveforms. So let's start with the first one, which is sine wave. So that's just a regular sine wave that contains only one frequency. The next waveform is sawtooth. As you can hear, this is the sawtooth that you can find on many analog and digital synths. Then comes the square wave. As expected. And in the end, we have the triangle wave. You can see already that they have a different amplitude. This is meant to compensate for the perceived volume. Now let's explore the additional controls which are provided to the sub-oscillator. As you can see, we have one potentiometer which is called content and one potentiometer which is called LFO2. So let's go back to our sine wave. Now I will press a note and manipulate the two controls. As you may have guessed, the content control on the sine oscillator is the FM amount. So what does it modulate the sine with? There's a second operator, which I will show you in a short, which controls the modulation of the first sine operator. So now what's about the LFO2 knob? So you hear it's again FM, but the FM amount is actually set by the LFO2. So it's a quick modulation control to tell the synthesizer how much of LFO2 you want on the content control. And this is applicable to all the waveforms. So let's go one step further and listen to the sawtooth. I bring back my LFO2 modulation down. So what you have just heard is the modulation of the sync ratio. Actually, the sawtooth oscillator plays two sawtooth, and with the content control, you can adjust the phase of them. Now let's go to the square wave, and as you can imagine, the content controls the pulse width. The triangle is very similar to the sine wave, so I show you it quickly. Alright, are there any extra parameters? And yes, on software version 1.06, 1.07, we have some extra parameters, but only for the FM-based oscillators. So now let's go back to the sine waveform, and we can access the extra parameters using the right arrow. Here we are, and we can see on the screen we have the rate control, which controls the relation of pitch between the modulator and the carrier, and the EGF control, which is the amount of the first envelope, which is usually used for the filter, on the amount of the modulator for the FM. So let's listen to this. I bring a little bit of content in, that's the amount of FM. And now I will change the ratio. Now let's say we want to build a classic FM bass a la Lately bass style, and we will need to use these extra controls. So let's do this. Here we have the classic sine oscillator. Now we will bring a little bit of FM. And we clearly hear that that's not the rate which is useful for bass. So let's change it. That's kind of right. And we need to change the ratio with time to get this pluckiness. Now we can adjust the envelope times. I think that's about right. We can bring a little bit of chorus if we want by setting the patch to be mono and detuned. Alright, now that we have seen the sub-oscillator, let's check the generator. So I will disable my sub-oscillator, it also saves some DSP resources, and then put my balance control all to the right so we can listen to the generator. Let's play some notes. That's just a regular sawtooth, you will say. So what's so special about the generator? The generator is very specific to Manatee. I call it spectral synthesis. You can call it additive synthesis. Some may say it's just having control on drawbars from a classic electric organ. The base principle is you are building a timbre by specifying the power of its harmonics, or partials, however you want to call them. This forms what is called a spectrum in the Manatee. Then you can decide how this spectrum is translated into sound by selecting a reconstruction waveform. So without being too technical, in the Fourier transform theory, the time domain is obtained by summing sinus waves as they contain a single frequency, but there are no real rules in this universe forbidding you to use different waveforms for the reconstruction, and this is what you can do specifically with the Manatee. So each waveform will give you a different taste on the selected spectrum. So let's select first the sinus wave for the reconstruction and the most basic spectrum, which has just the fundamental. Now I will play some notes and you might expect just to hear a sinus wave. Alright, it sounds a little bit more than just a sinus wave because the technique the Manatee uses to reconstruct the sound from the harmonics is a bit different than the basic one, and therefore you have this extra high frequency content. It's the secret source of the sound of the Manatee. Let's try out some more complex spectra. We have the spectrum knob here to change the spectrum content. So here we have still our first fundamental, and now we have second harmonic, fourth, and sixth. Let's listen to this. Very different from before. I can change to another spectrum again. Alright, and this is just the sine wave used for reconstruction. Let's listen to the same spectrum with a different waveform. So you can clearly hear that it changes completely the taste of the original waveform. But the sound is a bit static, isn't it? So this is where the extra controls for the spectrum generator comes in. So to edit or animate our spectrum, we need some macro parameters that can move, scale, invert the harmonics in a way that it is musically interesting. And for this we have, if I click here, the Formant control, the rotation control, and the inversion control. So let's take an interesting spectrum, for example this one for sure, and listen to what these extra controls do to the sound. As you can see, they all have a different strategy for changing the harmonics. So the Formant control actually compresses the harmonics to the right or to the left of the spectrum, as you can see on the display here. Now we have only one partial, which is the seventh on the right of the spectrum. And if you put the Formant control to the most negative, then you have only the fundamental. Rotation. So when I turn my macro pot that controls rotation to the right, what you can see is our harmonics are going to the right of the spectrum, and when they come to the end of it, they bounce back to the beginning. And now I've done a full rotation. If I turn my pot to the left, our harmonics are also going to the left and then come back to the beginning after a full rotation. Inversion is a bit trickier to understand, but let's have a look. We have our two partials harmonic in the middle of our spectrum, and if I turn up inversion, you will see that they slowly fade away and be compensated with all the other harmonics. So we end up to have some kind of negative spectrum of what we had before. So I do it again. Now I bring back the inversion down, and we have our initial harmonics back. So why it doesn't completely fill the spectrum, it's because the algorithm try to keep the volume a little bit consistent. So you can see the other harmonics they raise, but not completely to the top. How to use these controls in an efficient way. The secret behind is taking advantage of the modulations. So let's say we want to change the format control with the LFO1. So I will open the LFO1 page. We have a frequency set to 24, sine wave, amount 0 for now, and we will get to the target, and by default it's set to Formant, so it's exactly what we need. So we just need to change the amount of modulation. So let's listen to one note, and now we'll bring LFO1 to control Formant. We can accelerate the LFO. Change the waveform. And now we have some kind of robotic voice. Of course, other parameters from the generator can be modulated. You just need to go again into the target section and select, for example, generator rotation. And now, as you can see on the spectrum, you have the rotation which is modulated by the LFO1. Of course, this generator can be played polyphonically. And provides nice texture using the filter. Great! Now I wanted to talk about the extra sources which I shortly mentioned in the intro of this episode, which are noise and ring modulator. So for this, we will go back to this section next to balance, and we will disable first our spectrum generator and activate noise by pressing twice on the noise button. We will bring up the volume a little bit, and we can listen now to the noise. That's just a regular white noise, but we have two extra parameters, sample and hold and color. So let's listen to them. And now color. Both together. So as you can hear, sample and hold reduces the update rate of the noise, so it makes the noise which is a bit crushed in a way, or sampled reduced. The color is a dual filter. Every time in the Manatee you see color, it's always the same filter which is used, meaning that when you are in the positive value, you get a high pass filter, first order, and when you are in the negative value range, it's a low pass filter. So you can adjust the harmonic content, the sound of your noise. Let's listen now to the ring modulator, and for this we will simply reload the default preset. We need two oscillators because the ring modulator is the product of the signal of the two oscillators. So I will select the basic spectrum, a sinus wave. I will select the sinus wave also for the sub-oscillator, and now I will enable the ring modulator. And for this, double click on the ring button and it's in. So let's listen to this. For now, nothing special. To hear the sound of our ring modulator, we need somehow to detune the pitch of our both oscillators. And for this, we will go to here. That's our pitch control. We didn't talk about it until now. And normally it sets the basic tuning of both the oscillators in semitone in regard to the note that you're playing, and you have two additional parameters, fine and sub, that controls the detune between the two oscillator and the basic tone of the sub-oscillator. So as you can see, the sub-oscillator is now 1 octave lower as the spectrum oscillator, which you would expect if you want to use it as a sub-oscillator. So let's detune a little bit now our oscillators. And now we can clearly hear the ring modulator. So I remove it. I put it in. Let's play a different note. Without. With. So you can clearly hear that it adds some kind of bell-like sound. Overall, the ring modulator is nice to produce bells-like sounds, percussion, stabs, and so on. Lastly, the Manatee offers different play modes. So you can play a part in mono, in polyphonic, and you have different options that goes with. So let's reload a default preset. We will select our sub-oscillator, set it to sawtooth. We have a basic tone. We can remove the reverb. And now, if you press the switch play, you will access the play modes. By default, a part is set to poly, so you can play chords. But of course, you can set it to mono, and you will be allowed to play only one note at the time. It's particularly useful when you want to make lead sounds or bass sounds. You have some extra modes, which are Legato, for example, and that's useful with the envelopes for actually solo sounds. So what is this Legato mode made for? It's when you are playing some kind of solo and you don't want to have your envelopes to retrigger. So let's do an example. I'm selecting sawtooth again. I will close my filter a bit, add some envelope, make it plucky, for example. And now, when I'm playing each note individually, you can hear that the envelopes retriggers. But now, if I press each note while keeping one note down, doesn't retrigger. What goes nice with Legato is also glide, and for this you have the extra parameters of the play mode, so the next page, and you can enable glide here and set the time. That's a bit much. That's nice. In addition to glide, you have volume here on the second play page, and this volume is used to normalize your sounds. So if you want to build up a bank or a set of different sounds and you want that they sound similar in volume, you can always adjust the preset volume here with the volume parameter. We have two extra pages we can check. These are the vibrato page and the tremolo page. So the vibrato is an extra modulator that changes the pitch of your sound at the frequency you want. So let's listen to this. The rise control is made so that the modulation comes progressively in. Or immediately. And the tremolo is very similar. These two modulators are independent and they can add some kind of old school flavor to your preset. There is one thing I forgot to mention, and it's very important. It's in the play modes. In the play modes, you have your mono, legato, poly modes, and they have also their counterpart in duosonic. So what do I mean is when you set mono in duosonic mode, you will trigger two voices once playing a note, and you can adjust how detuned are the voices in sense and how wide or what's the width of these voices on the stereo spectrum. So if you want to add some kind of chorusy vibe to the sound, some binaural effect, then you can use these extra modes, which are mono in duosonic, legato in duosonic, and poly in duosonic. But you have to keep in mind that these modes, they use one voice more per note pressed. So let's listen to the difference between poly and poly in duosonic mode. So that's just poly. And now in duosonic mode, this is completely stereo. That's flat and mono. No detune between the voices. 134 cents. Let's keep it nice. Very useful in general. And that's about it for this episode. We see us on the next one. Hope you liked it and you learned something. See you!